we all know the components of go-to-market, marketing and sales and CS, and CS can be onboarding and support, and CSMs and account management may fall under sales. But those are individually important, and we need to know what tasks need to happen in different stages and who's going to own those. But so much of it is the alignment across all of them. And you hear me talk a lot about breaking out of silos, and this is where the connective tissue comes in. Is everybody on the same page, understanding who the ICP is, the ideal customer profile that we're focusing on? Is everybody aligned on what problems you're trying to solve? Is everybody using the same terminology even? Do we mean the same things? Are we perceiving the systems the same way? Are we doing handoffs well? Do we understand that we're all part of one system?
Hello, hello. Tiffany and I are here today with Beth Yehaskel. She is a revenue architect and go-to-market advisor with over 25 years in tech. She used to work at Winning by Design. Many of you have maybe met her in her revenue architecture course that she delivered through Pavilion and Winning by Design. She is an excellent coach and has so many incredible things to say. So I'm excited to learn from her today, and you should be too. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So Beth, you're consulting now, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Full-time?
I am. Yes. I'm consulting and coaching full-time.
And what type of customers are you working with?
It's a great question. It seems to be a bit of a range. It's everything from smaller startups that are, $5 million, $10 million in revenue, all the way up to $150, $200 million. It's mostly companies that are trying to sort out their go-to-market motion and just aren't quite sure where to begin. And then I have some coaching clients as well. Sometimes they're the same and there's a combined kind of thing, but sometimes I just have coaching clients on the side as well.
That's the span there is so interesting. I think one of the things I'm always scared of is that startup space. I feel like, I live and breathe go-to-market operations all day, every day in my day job. And that terrifies me to be in a place that small. I think because there's so much to go invent and build when you're at that stage. I'd love to hear from you how you think about like when you're advising at a company or consulting for a company in that small stage, like where are your priorities when you're walking in, and what is the first thing you often solve for those companies?
Yeah, that's so funny that you say that. That is scary because to me, it's great because they haven't built any bad habits yet, and it's early enough where you can really kind of set up a good foundational structure for them to then scale on top of. So I like working with startups because there's often a lot of low-hanging fruit. And probably the biggest thing is just getting them to focus on less. Because to your point, there's so much you can do. And of course, you looked at LinkedIn and there's like a million different things. And I read this article and there's this book and this new thing. And we have to do all these different things. And really, it's like at the end of the day, all you need to do is identify what kind of clients you want, figure out how to find them and have them find you, communicate how you can help their business, sell them, set them up, and deliver impact. Like it's that. And it's so easy to get caught up and swirl with a million other things. So I like working with the smaller companies because it's great to be able to get in early enough to set up the foundation so you don't have to unwind as much. But it's also fun to fix, organizations that are a little further along and that maybe have run into some recurring issues over and over and they don't know why. That's where the systems thing comes in.
Interesting.
So Beth, I love following you on LinkedIn. You have great content. I know you write all your own content, which I feel like is rare for a lot of go-to-market professionals out there. I'm not knocking anyone, but I see it. And one thing you talk a lot about is the connective tissue that holds go-to-market systems together. And I'm just curious, can you explain that? And what does that actually look like inside a healthy go-to-market organization?
Yeah, I think that's so important. We all know the components of go-to-market, marketing and sales and CS, and CS can be onboarding and support, and CSMs and account management may fall under sales. But those are individually important, and we need to know what tasks need to happen in different stages and who's going to own those. But so much of it is the alignment across all of them. And you hear me talk a lot about breaking out of silos, and this is where the connective tissue comes in. Is everybody on the same page, understanding who the ICP is, the ideal customer profile that we're focusing on? Is everybody aligned on what problems you're trying to solve? Is everybody using the same terminology even? Do we mean the same things? Are we perceiving the systems the same way? Are we doing handoffs well? Do we understand that we're all part of one system? If you do something in a sales cycle, it will impact onboarding teams and CSM teams and AM teams, whether you intend for that or not, it will happen. And so when I talk about the connective tissue, it's all of that in between stuff. And the more that you can really make that strong, it makes a huge difference in outcomes, in my experience.
So interesting to hear you use the word system in this context. I think especially in the RevOps, go-to-market ops space, when you hear the word system, you think Salesforce or whatever all-encompassing revenue platform someone is trying to sell me day in and day out that does the end-all be-all that I need to move everything to. And I would imagine in the smaller startup space, those are the bright, shiny objects that are like, that will solve all of my problems. I just need to buy XYZ revenue or orchestration system. And you think
Yeah.
tool. But what you're really describing is like the living, breathing
Yes.
organization and the way in which it functions. I don't think a lot of people use that term to mean that. When did you start applying the word system? Or because I do think it's unique in hearing it from you. And where did you pick that up at?
I think just it's been in and out through years of just thinking about a business as an ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
Just those connections, whether you use a spider web kind of thing or, a coral reef or, pick your system and how things are connected and influence each other around. It's funny that that's actually a good reminder, your question, that a lot of people connect the word system to tools. And to me, a system by nature is something that has multiple components. And when something occurs in the system, by definition, there will be first and second and third order impacts. Some will be small, some will be bigger, but a change in the system has an impact on other parts of the system. That's what makes it a system. And so I don't know exactly when I really started leaning into it, but I guess, a few years ago, certainly when I was teaching revenue architecture, which I started doing about 5 years ago, that came up a lot in explaining how the components of go-to-market relate to one another. And just as a way to describe it in a more meaningful way that started to resonate with people a bit.
I would tell you why I love it specifically. One of the things that Kelly and I spend a lot of time talking about is AI on the show, off the show, all the time. Everyone does. And because system often translates to technology, and that's where AI is in the forefront, the connotation of system you're using is a biological system. You said ecosystem, but like you named other like biological systems, which puts humans like back in front and
Mhm.
center of
Yeah.
everything that's working. And I think it's a really good reminder that a system isn't just tools and AI, and that the people and how they behave in it are a big piece of how it ultimately functions. So
Yeah.
it really resonated with me the way you use that term.
Yeah. And processes are part of a system too,
Sure.
right? It's the tools, it's the people, it's the process, it's the comp structures, right? Like it's all in there. So, yeah. And it's living, to your point. I talk a lot about the maturity curve also, because to our earlier point, talking about startups versus scale ups versus more enterprise organizations, different companies at different maturity levels have different needs. There's different things that they need to focus on, whether it's efficiency or product market fit or whatever it might be. And so the go to market system is in fact a living thing that's shifting the whole time. So
Mhm.
I also like the analogy for that reason, because it is that. It's not, you're never done.
Yeah.
I like that you focused on the impacts to the other system and the different layers of impacts. I think when I walk into organizations, so frequently there are silos, and we know there are always silos,
Always.
but there's system silos, but then there's also empathy silos and change management silos that happen there
Yes.
too, where it's, if your KPIs in marketing are different than your KPIs in sales, then you
Yeah.
might make a change without being empathetic to how that impacts the other go-to-market teams. And yes, there's processes that we need to think through, and there's tools and there's systems, but there's also people behind all of that. And so frequently I see, especially now that we're implementing AI at the speed we are, that gets forgotten really quickly.
Yes, that's a really good point. And it was funny, I had those conversations so long ago when I started in SaaS and executive roles. It was deep in CS, starting back in the 2000s. And in customer success in the early days in particular, this still holds true, but the handoff from sales to CS was always really hard. There was one point where I was leading a CS organization and it finally got so bad where I actually had to work with the sales team to withhold commission on deals until they actually would get the CS and onboarding teams the information that they needed. And it's funny now just thinking about that. And like you say, it's that empathy, right? It's not just about your tasks and the things that you need to do, but back to the system, right? Like you're doing something and then it needs to move into the next phase of things, and other people have things to do to make the whole successful so that we achieve the outcomes as a company that we're all working towards. So I hadn't really thought about it in terms of the empathy piece like that, but you're absolutely right. Yeah.
I'd love to. So we talked a little bit about how you build a system, or like, starting from scratch, maybe my biggest fear. What I end up coming into are systems that are in place, and I don't know that they're always broken, but I like the iteration factor. But I think a lot of times they are broken, or there's cracks, there's breaks. I'd love to understand from you if you have your own methodology of identifying like how a system is actually broken, or where to look to understand where the breaks might be.
Yeah, usually when I'm coming in with a new client, as you would expect, it's a lot of listening, right? I want to hear how they talk about their quote unquote problems and the issues that they're having and seeing, because sometimes they'll be finger pointing. Oh, our problem is marketing. We don't have enough top of funnel. Oh, our problem is sales. They're not closing deals. Oh, the problem is CS. Our retention isn't high enough. But more often, the issue is less with a team or a process or a tool, and it is actually the system itself is broken. And that'll show up if you continuously are missing quarters, your forecasts are always incorrect, things that just the same problems keep recurring. That's usually indicative that there's a system issue. But before I come in and kind of diagnose things, I have to listen a lot and look at the data, because sometimes it's an alignment part, like that's where to start people. Just again on vocabulary, like let's talk about ideal customer profile. Do you have one? And do you all recognize that that is the one, or do you all have different ideas of what that means? For other organizations, sometimes it is that they're so focused on just product and features that they're sort of missing the customer part of, like, you're not just selling a set of features, you are solving a problem for your customers, and that is the exchange, right? You are helping them achieve business goals and they're giving you dollars for that. There is an exchange there. It's not just hitting a number, as a sales rep. So I have to listen to understand what's going on in the organization. So there's the maturity part, but then there's how are the teams interacting? What is the leadership like? Does leadership get it? Is there alignment there? Is there misalignment? Is it a junior team? Sometimes people just haven't quite been exposed to a healthy system before, so they don't know what to do. So there's no one right answer. But usually by coming in and listening and knowing what the primary focus should be depending on maturity, I can usually pretty quickly hone in on what are the things that are going to move the needle quickly. And then even my own process is testing and iterate, right? Like, let's do this one session and we'll talk about the bow tie, right? And we'll align on the customer journey. And then once we do that, people will start to have other ideas, and then that will move people forward. And then it sort of changes the shape of the system a little bit and highlights, okay, we weren't sure which of these two directions to go in, but now that we've had this conversation, it's very clear that this is where we need to go next. So a little art, little science.
It always is.
Challenge that I see in organizations, and I'm curious how you handle this and go to market, is especially in smaller organizations, there isn't a single decision maker when it comes to go to market. There are multiple people.
Mm-hmm.
And as someone who comes in as a consultant, I see this all the time because I will ask the question, who can make the decision for us on what we move forward or what we cut or can sign off on this ICP? And there very rarely is someone like clearly defined. And I think that's one of the things that makes go to market so amazing and fun and so difficult. So I'm curious, how do you work around that and how do you advise your customers on how you make decisions in such a complex world?
Yeah, decisions around go to market and
Yeah.
processes and things like that. Yeah. A lot of this, it's funny, I find myself in my own work leaning a lot on the sales training and go to market training that I do with clients, my own self. It's like, okay, stakeholder mapping from the jump. It's like, okay, well, who is my champion, my executive champion? Who's the one who's signing the check, right? Like, who is the person who is the top decision maker? And that's something that I talk about in the sales cycle, my own sales cycle, right? Then, okay, who are the key stakeholders? Who's going to be in that steering committee that we have on a regular basis? And that's not going to be everybody. It's going to be like a set group of people. And we talk about who those people are and why. And then it sort of goes down from there. And I think that so often it's about understanding who makes the decision, but more important is that everybody's aligned on the why of a decision. Sometimes there's a very clear quote unquote right decision to be made, but sometimes there's not. And it's actually, it almost doesn't matter. You just need to pick one and you all need to understand why it's that one. And so let's just communicate. So a lot of time I feel like you might find this too in the consulting work that I do so much is facilitating conversations among the organization that I'm working with in the go-to-market teams. And they're getting there on their own. I'm just sort of helping steer the ship to some degree and, providing some tools and tactics.
So yeah, I guess hopefully from your projects, you're leaving them with a way to make those decisions moving forward. Because I think that is just the trickiest thing is it a sales decision? Is it a marketing decision? Is it a revs ops decision because it's tool? And you get a lot of passing the hot potato, I think, is what you see.
Well, this is where I think it's funny. I started doing some executive coaching because people asked me to. And then once that started happening, I really enjoyed the coaching, but I thought I want to actually get certified. So if I'm going to coach, I want to make sure I know what I'm doing. So I went through a 9-month program and I got ICF certified and all that. And what I didn't expect really, but has turned out to be very true is the executive coaching knowledge and experience has been a really great complement to the consulting things. Because in those kind of situations like you're talking about, sometimes it is actually navigating like the egos of two leaders, right? Or this one's style is more authoritative and that one not as much, and they're just not meeting the right way. And so, I point all the time, I have my tools, Crucial Conversations is a favorite book that I always point people towards, to navigate things and things that I lean on with it. But it's funny, a lot of it I can lean on that coaching to help with the facilitation and navigating some of those sticky situations more than I expected, which has been a nice, fun surprise.
Yeah, I think that the lack of ownership of decisions in go-to-market is a huge problem that I face on the regular. And it's not because there aren't the right leaders in place, but so many decisions, to your point, because it's a system, impact across the board. People don't feel confident in the decision they're making. They don't want to be the one accountable for the results of those decisions. And then you fall back to this decision by committee instead, because everyone wants to say, well, we all got in a room. You said this. I didn't say that. I actually remember I said I didn't think this was a good idea so long. Anyways, you get these like funny committee behaviors as a result. And so, and maybe this comes from your executive coaching work, but how do you get people to wrap themselves around the accountability side of making some of these decisions to move the system forward?
Yeah, I think some of it is taking a little bit of the pressure off of it in that these decisions are important, but they don't need to be permanent. And it goes back to the testing and iterate thing, right? Like I'm big into pilots. Like a lot of times I'm working with clients who don't really have a good go-to-market system motion going from top of funnel all the way across the sales cycle, so on and so forth. And so rather than say we're going to fix everything, right? We're going to do all this stuff. I'll say, let's pick one ICP. Doesn't even have to be your biggest. And this is more for like a company that's in scale up or maybe even bigger than that, right? Let's pick one ICP and let's just focus in on how we find them, how they find us, what are the definitions of that ICP, like how detailed can we get, how crisp, what are the personas, what do we know works to engage them, to identify their pain points and the impact goals, and to create the critical event and the urgency to get that deal closed and signed and avoid discounting as much as possible and like closing it and getting them set up and all of that. And so building that go-to-market motion. Let's go through it with a single ICP and learn. And then we step back and discuss. And so, yes, we're making a decision, but we're also checking in on that decision with operational rhythms, and we're adjusting as data tells us that a change needs to be made in some part of it. So it's less of like a decision chiseled in stone, and it's more of a, we're going to go in this direction. And here's why. This makes sense to everybody. Okay, anybody see any red flags? No? Okay, well, let's go. And then we check in again. And that goes to that connective tissue, a big part of which is communication and the communication rhythm across the go-to-market organization.
I see that often when you bring in executives or leaders from really large companies into small companies. And that's one of the things I think they face a lot of times, is because a small decision actually has massive impacts at a really large organization. And so they still think like that, and they struggle to narrow it down to, okay, we actually are small enough and agile enough to make a decision and then change our mind.
Yeah.
And so that's just something I see that people should think about. So you talked a lot about testing and iterating, which I love. I am guilty that when I test and iterate, I come up with 100 more ideas of things I want to do. I'm working on it. I really am. But how do you then help teams determine, okay, you've been testing, you're iterating, you're about to do too much. You need to back up. How, like, what framework, what filter, how do you decide that?
Yeah. You know, a lot of times there's little signals, things, when you start seeing a lot of reactivity, that's usually a pretty big signal to me that people are getting too busy. They're not able to be thoughtful anymore. They're just like going. So it's just reactivity. And then you can't be as thoughtful. You can't prioritize as much because you're just trying to get stuff done, right? And cram things through. So I think some of it is just really practically asking people, like, what are your priorities this week? And this goes kind of to the operating rhythm and the communication, right? Like, okay, how many deals are you running? All right, that's a lot of deals. What are the top 5 this week that you're focused on? And the more that you can get clarity around what the bigger priorities are and why, and people can articulate those, then you can start to see when there's too much going on. If people can articulate priorities, and that's a whole other issue too that gets in there, like, okay, you need to, we only have so many hours in the day. And I like breaking down the math too for people. Just looking at the number of working hours in a standard 40-hour year, work week year, take out, 30 to 40% of that for internal meetings, admin stuff, like all of that. And this is for specifically go-to-market roles and customer-facing roles. That leaves this number of hours each year for customers. And so if you start literally breaking down, okay, well, we're having a sales rep do discovery calls and this kind of thing and that, and a CSM is doing quarterly business reviews and kickoff meetings or weekly check-ins. How many hours does that stuff add up to? And if you can kind of quickly start seeing the numbers get way out of whack. And then that's a good way to come back and say, all right, let's talk about what really needs to happen. What are the important things? And this helps simplify and get rid of some of that clutter, because often we're not spending time on the right things. We just are busy.
Yeah. I love that. And that makes me wonder. I mean, I always, Kelly knows this, I put my hat, like my day job hat on all the time. Like I'm always taking notes as we're like talking to people, like, oh, I can go back and like do that at like work. How do you help RevOps teams, go-to-market operations teams really start to transition to thinking about like strategically the system health. Because something you said just now around like you were referring to sellers around like you're just busy and you're getting through all the things, but that's often what's happening to RevOps professionals too. We're just fixing all the things and you're fixing things in the system. Sometimes you cause 1, 2, third level waves of things you didn't intend to do because you're moving too quickly. How do you reorient to really thinking about the whole system so you can be more, what I would think would be more strategic in how you're executing?
Yeah. I mean, I do this for myself, and as makes sense, I apply this for customers too. I can be pretty analog. I'm like, if I'm starting to feel overwhelmed or I'm talking to somebody and a client who is feeling that way, I'm like, all right, let's just list out what are all the things on your plate right now. Literally put the list together. And sometimes either once you write it down, it's less than you think it is, and it starts to become clear, okay, like this is actually manageable, and it's very clear which ones are more important. Or you see that it's a totally unreasonable list. And you also, when it's in front of you like that, you can see that these things are not as important. Like it's usually fairly obvious. The nuance I think in RevOps that can be interesting is depends on who you report to and who the influencers of RevOps can be.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes there's people who you need to keep happy for whatever reason. They're in the C suite, something else, and they have requests that you know might not be the most urgent thing, but you also know that you really need to keep that stakeholder happy. So there's a little bit of that going on, which is where the coaching part comes in. But I think that this is where the more senior that anybody gets, I think that you need to be able to move up and down in altitude. You need to be a little bit more agile that way. And that means being able to zoom in and do the tasks and the things or manage the team in doing the things. But then you also need to keep stepping back every so often and somewhat regularly saying, okay, let me look at the big picture. Like, is this still the right thing?
Yeah.
Okay, like let's zoom back in again, like back out. And you have to keep doing that. And I know in my own career, that shift from like a senior manager director into like more VP executive role, that is the big distinguishing thing. I think
Yeah.
that ability to truly move from tactical to strategic and like back and forth as needed, I think that's a really huge thing. Sometimes at startups, there isn't the leadership experience there that has the ability to do that as well, which is why coaching can be so great because this can be taught. It's fine. But sometimes it's, you might have people who have been around the block for a while, but they still just never really got good at doing that. But I think it's important because we have to keep looking at it with different perspectives. Things change all the time.
So you mentioned the idea of taking a step back, and to do that, you have to have the space to take a step back. And we're
Yes.
in annual planning right now.
Oh, we
Yes.
are? I didn't even notice.
Well, I'm not, but no, I know. But oftentimes, what I see happening right around this time period is, we've got 2 months. People are looking at their budgets and they're trying to cut heads, but then they're also trying to request more
Mhm.
bodies. They're like, okay, the only way we're going to superpower this growth engine right now is to throw bodies at it. And RevOps wants 5 people, and the sales team needs to double if they want to hit their quotas. And they're looking at cash flows, and it becomes very complex. What should they sit back and think about first before they start throwing all of these bodies at their growth number?
Mhm. I think recognizing whether you have a healthy go-to-market system. And by that, I mean, going back to what I said earlier, are your forecasts pretty accurate? Do you know what activities lead to what outcomes? Do you know who you're selling to? Do you know what the pain points are most commonly and the impacts delivered, right? Like just those basic things. Do you know that or not? If you do, then you should be able to look at the economics of it and use that to inform headcount too, because you need to step back and understand like your CAC to LTV ratios and, just all of that kind of unit economics of things. Like what is every type of revenue costing you? And so every body that you're going to hire in is going to drive that up. And do they know what to do to actually prove out the revenue that they can drive for the spend that you're going to put into that body, right? Like all those kind of things. So I think that this time of year, even a little earlier than this,
hopefully earlier than this, but
yeah.
I don't know. I've been in some budget discussions in November for sure.
Yeah. Are you really, in fact, ready to scale? Scaling doesn't just mean throwing bodies at a problem, and that is a big misconception that I see all the time. One question I like to ask people when they're telling me about all the reps they're going to hire, for next quarter or something like that. Like, great. So show me what is the process that you're going to use to onboard them. Explain to me how you sell. So how will you train them to sell? Well, we're just going to hire really good people who already know how to do it, right? Like those kind of things. Like, okay, well, let's take a step back. And there's just some questions like that that really start to shine a light on where maybe you could spend a little bit of extra effort. And it's that old adage, like a little more time spent up front will help you go much faster later. But a lot of people want to skip that. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't think we're ever going to stop seeing people try to solve problems with bodies or with tools for that matter. Everybody always has a new magic tool that's going to solve a fill in the blank issue that they have. I don't know how many times you need to make the mistake before you realize that there is no silver bullet. But in my experience, being practical and pragmatic and just building a foundation based on first principles and known models and frameworks and data, it works every time.
I also think, to the point on tools, right? Everything's a bright, shiny object if it's just more and more things. But when you build the correct system, then it's very easy to say, I can plug AI in here because I know how it's supposed to work, or I can plug this tool in. You're not, I think a lot of people create systems or right now buy agentic solutions thinking that they will provide the underlying structure and framework of how they need to operate, when in fact they require you to know that information to be successful. So I think it makes, if you're in the camp of like, your board is telling you to like use every AI possible and be agentic forward, you have to have the right system in place to be successful there.
Yeah. And you can't know where you can optimize and where you can have efficiencies if you don't know actually what the repeatable steps are to begin with.
Yeah.
It's very akin to like when I see people say, oh, we're launching an organization, we're building a SaaS company, we're just going to buy Salesforce and it's going to be great.
It's great.
Like, okay, well, what are your stages? Like, what are all the, what terms are you, all those things. Like buying the tool doesn't build the process, right? And it would be nice, maybe. I mean, if you pay the companies a lot of money, you can have services that might help set that up. But we so just want the silver bullet. And I get it. I mean, it would be really nice. And when you're stressed out and you have a lot of pressure on you, it's really appealing, and it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So you teach or taught revenue architecture. Again, that's why so many people in the go-to-market world know you. What was the most surprising aha moment that you saw from people that took that course from you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Let's see. I think there are probably a few things. I mean, the revenue architecture content, so for those who aren't familiar, the idea is literally that there's first principles and 6 models that allow you to architect a path to healthy revenue, right? With go-to-market systems thinking involved and all that sort of stuff. So there's 6 models involved. And I think that what a lot of people really took away from it was the way that some of the specific models were taught, highlighting why some assumptions don't work. For example, one really simple part that's early in the course that seems really basic but was an aha moment for a lot of people is we talk about the sales funnel all the time, right? And you have a funnel and you throw leads in the top and deals come out the bottom and voila, right? We're all good. Well, if you're in SaaS and you have a recurring revenue model, where is the recurring revenue in that funnel? It's literally not there. It's not represented. And suddenly people are like, oh, wait a second, you're right. We have a recurring revenue business and we're thinking in our heads, we're using this image of a funnel that totally is missing the recurring revenue part. So that's where the bow tie comes in, right? Like you tilt it over on its side. It doesn't mean the funnel, it doesn't have meaning and value, but it's just the beginning. And you need the whole other part of it and to represent that recurring piece. So just things like that. I think that's one thing I really liked about the course. A lot of the content, it's not that it's so revelatory on its own. It's actually quite simple and straightforward and pragmatic, but it cuts through the noise, and it's just about, helping identify the rational and emotional impacts that you're delivering to customers. What does that actually mean? Like, can you do that? Do you know what that even is? It's not rocket science, but bringing it down to those basics really struck a lot of people. And a lot of the executives I was teaching have been around the block for a long time. And this is not a new world for them, but I think they just hadn't thought about some of these things in those very simple terms for a while.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But we're at the point in our episode actually already. These conversations always happen so fast, where you leave us and whoever's listening with a question we should go back as homework and answer to help us form a point of view. I've already got so many good nuggets of information from you, but I'd love to hear, and Kelly would too, I know. What question do you want to leave us with to go back and think about?
I think that there's a lot of different directions that I could go in, but I think one of the big things is for people to just think about whatever organization you're working within right now, within that go-to-market, just step back and think about the silos in that connective tissue. I think that is one of the more important things, and it's squishy enough that it often doesn't show up on any list anywhere. But there's often really simple things that can happen there. So I just would encourage people, think about that connective tissue between the go-to-market components. What assumptions exist there or might exist? Where are the same terms maybe being misunderstood? Where do people maybe have a perspective that's not quite aligned? And I would just encourage people, think of 1, 2, maybe 3 things that you recognize that you can probably actually have a hand in addressing.
I'm definitely going to do that. I love that homework.
Again, I'm already getting ideas. I was on a call earlier this week, and I think 30 minutes on a call, realized that we were talking about 2 different ideas of territory planning.
Yes.
Completely.
Yeah.
I was thinking about how does a rep do their territory planning and prioritize their accounts? And they were thinking about how they map their territory plans to the ICP.
Yeah. Yeah.
A whole 30-minute conversation until we realized we were talking about 2 totally different ideas and tasks.
Yeah, it's so common. It's so common. It's funny. I talk about this just in general, like in coaching, but even in, just any human relationship with, spouses or kids or family or friends, whatever. Assumptions are so dangerous, and we make them all the time. And it's kind of a shortcut. Again, it's almost like a bit of a silver bullet too. Like, I'm just going to assume that you are on the same page as me rather than take the moment to validate and make sure. And man, you can save a whole lot of pain with that moment validating.
Yes. Well, Beth, for anyone who wants to find you, connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn, connect, check out my posts. If there's anything you want me to write more about, let me know. Yeah, reach out if you want to nerd out about any of this stuff. I'm always happy to talk about it more. And yeah, this has been fun. I love these conversations. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, no, this was great. I really enjoyed this. Very timely for, planning, as you mentioned, Kelly, thinking about the areas that we're going to focus on. So I have lots of homework to go back and think about. So I appreciate that, Beth. Thank you so much.